I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with the cattle market summary for the week ending January the 19th, where we had an amazing rebound on your feeder cattle. It didn't really happen until the middle of the week, but if you remember back the previous week, that was about the time that things fell out of bed. So that was great to get that back, and nobody really saw that coming, to be able to regain everything that we'd lost just in a matter of 1 week, and not a lot of things had happened to justify that, but the board did come back pretty strong after being closed on Monday due to Martin Luther King Jr. Day. But it forced your fat cattle market higher at the tail end of the week too. And I tell you what, this market's got a lot of momentum going forward now, and we're seeing maybe a light at the end of the tunnel on this winter. We've got some more winter weather to go, but we had a break in the cold, and it's kind of got everybody's spirits back up, and looking forward to another good week. But you look at your board for last week, your April live cattle. Monday, of course, was closed due to the holiday. Tuesday was up 92 cents. Wednesday up 240. Big gains on Wednesday all across the board. Thursday was up 70 cents. Friday down 75. To end the day with April live cattle, at the end of the week, 122.72. That was up $3.27 for the week. Your February spot live cattle at 121.90, which the cash market blew by that pretty handily. But your March feeder cattle, of course, closed on Monday also. Tuesday up $1.27, Wednesday up $2.05, Thursday up $1.20, and Friday back down $1.57 on some profit taking. To end the week with March feeder cattle at 145.60, up $2.95 for the week. And you saw big gains this week on your cattle board. And even though the market was down hard the previous week, we didn't see that much of a loss on the board. So really, we're way ahead of the game as far as the board goes. January spot feeder cattle ending the week at 147.95, and right in there tight with what your index levels are. But fat cattle trade, nothing happened all week long. Just the packers were really digging in and being quiet, knowing all well that they were going to have to give more money for cattle, but never really peeped a word of it until Friday afternoon, and towards the latter part of the afternoon, started selling cattle at or buying cattle and trading them at 123. That was straight up $3 higher than the previous week. Had a few late sales. This is a big bonus here. A few late sales in Texas, which you know, Texas doesn't sell hardly any cattle private treaty anymore, but 123.50 late, and that's important to know that the market was still gaining ground after a lot of the trade had already happened. What dress trade we did see in the Northern Plains was 195. That was straight up $3 higher also. Box beef cutout values for the average of last week's trade, choice cutouts 205.89, down 372. Saw a big loss in your cutout values after the previous week when we saw the big gains when your cattle market was going down, but all those high population areas were refilling their shelves after the holiday cold spell and some storms that come through there. Select cutouts average trade for the week $200.51. That was down $2.47 for the week. Your choice select spread setting at $5.38. The big news through the week was the sale of the announcement of the sale of Five Rivers Cattle Feeding, which was previously owned by JBS, and they've now turned that over and let somebody else handle all the capital it takes to feed all those cattle. I noted earlier in the week, if you were listening, that that's kind of a trend now. You're seeing a lot of these big feeding outfits that are really owned by the packers, which P&S regulation says packers aren't supposed to own cattle. Well, they haven't enforced that for 30 or 40 years at least, but all of those big feeding outfits that were previously owned by a corporation that owned the big packing plants, they're starting to turn those over more and more and let somebody else handle all the capital it takes to feed those cattle. And you know, we've said a lot that cattle feeding may not be a good investment, and it may not if you just look at it straight up. You know, maybe 1 or 2 years out of 10 you'll make money, but when you enter risk management in there, which is just as important as any other element, you put that in there, and you can lock in a basis at least in there. And once you're long the cash cattle market all the time and you're long in it that deep, that brings into play a whole lot of other risk management schemes that you can use that tend to turn out pretty profitable if you know how to handle it. And you see that Five Rivers sale went to somebody that knows how to handle that risk management and take advantage of being long the cash market all the time. Your sale was really said to have been turned over to Pinnacle Asset Management. They're the ones that had the biggest play in the money. New York outfit that's not really known to the agriculture industry or cattle feeding. Osprey Management, which was a partner in that, another one out of New York City. But you look at the one element that was recognizable to the cattle industry was the third partner, which was Arcadia Asset Management out of Oklahoma City, which is run by Jordan Levy, which his name has been around the cattle feeding business for a long time, at least 20 years. And he has Chicago roots, grew up learning all about the commodity business, and then fell in love with cattle feeding and being in the cattle business, relocated to Oklahoma City, and has been kind of entrenched there in the stockyards, in the buying of feeder cattle, and feeding cattle of his own, and handling risk management for a lot of cattle feeders. So that's somebody that we kind of identify in that whole business, and they said it was in the neighborhood of around $200 million, but it looks like everything's pretty much going to stay the same. They're going to be buying the same kind of a cattle in the same areas, feeding them in the same way, and the lion's share of them will continue to go to JBS. They may post a pin here and there on the Fed Cattle Exchange just to make it look good, like some of the other outfits that are tied in tight with the packers. But you look at your week coming this week, we see talking about the government shutdown. Unless they get something done overnight there late in the weekend, we're going to start out the business week with the government shutdown. How would that affect cattle at all? It's not going to affect your beef or any kind of slaughter inspectors, because that has to do with food safety. So that would be essential, and those people will still work. It won't affect your graders, because your graders are actually paid by the packing plant, so those will still be there. The one thing it will affect is market news, and being with market news for 18 years like I was familiar with that 5 years ago when we had the shutdown involved in that. And really what the government does, and it comes down all the way from the top, is they want things to be problematic. They want things to be messed up when the government shuts down. I know there were auction sales that we covered on the federal side in the state of Missouri where I ran things, and we could have had a state person come over and pick that up where the markets would still be reported. No, that was not allowed, because they wanted things to be messed up when they have a government shutdown. They want turmoil, they want problems, they want people calling and complaining, and that's what the government shutdown is all about. Well, on the federal side, market news would be shut down if that continues to go forward here early this week. So any of your federally reported things are going to be shut down, but you can go to a lot of your state departments of agriculture, go on their websites. The federal government won't even let the states post things on the federal website like they normally always do, because they want turmoil. They want things to be messed up, and they want that to hurry up and be resolved and get things going again. But you look at your feeder markets for the week last week. Your real-time index ended the week at 147.84, up $2.51 compared to the previous week. And if you think about that, your early week sales were quite a bit lower, maybe not as sharply lower as your mid to late week sales the previous week, but they were still trying to catch up with that down market earlier in the week in your high volume Monday and Tuesday sales. But then things just turned right around with help from the board and help from weather and just a lot of demand for feeder cattle. And we saw your markets, your big markets, of course your biggest at OKC West and El Reno that was down so hard the previous week, turned right around and was sharply higher this past week. And for the most part, your mid to late week sales and your feeder cattle this week were $8 to $10 higher. Your calves weren't as much lower the previous week and they weren't as much higher this week, but still a positive trend on them, with them selling $2 to $5 higher. One thing that probably helped, no doubt, was your auction receipts were not nearly as heavy this past week as they were the week before, with auction receipts 40% less than they were the previous week whenever your prices were that much lower. But we started out the week after a cold weekend, if you remember that, and a lot of places that have high volume sales, it was just hard for guys to get around and get everything done that they needed to get their cattle in to sell them. So the cold was responsible for part of that. About midweek we saw that cold really trend off, and we saw some mild temperatures come across the entire country. And that will bring about big runs starting out this week. So expecting big runs in your high volume sales starting out this week. Your market should be a lot better, should be good demand and good trading of feeder cattle going forward from this week, with help from your higher fat cattle market late in the week. But look at an auction market report on Cattle Market Central, way out west there, Merle Haggard country, Shasta Livestock Auction Yard, Cottonwood, California, had a big calf special late last week on Friday, near 6,000 head at a commercial feeder cattle sale in California. And you look, the market was a lot higher, and you look at some popular weights, and like I said, they had a lot of good calves there. But on your 4-weight calves, over 2,500 head of 4-weight steer calves average 427 pounds at 187.70. This is in California. 1,122 head of 5-weight steers average 544 pounds at 166.60. And individual quote back up here in the middle part of the country, but in the northern plains in Lexington, Nebraska on Friday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at 123 head of 776 pound steers bring 157.60. From a home DV auction office here in Canyon, Texas, that's a look at your week's market, and we'll talk to you next week.